Welcome to Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy, the podcast where insights and innovation meet. Every episode, we dive into conversations with industry leaders, experts, and change makers, bringing you the stories and ideas in the renewable energy sector that shape our world. And now, let's jump into today's episode with your host, Wes Ashworth. Welcome back to Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy. Today, we're joined by Grant Gunnison, founder and CEO of Zero Homes, a climate tech startup transforming how Americans upgrade their homes. A nationally recognized expert in sustainable home energy, Grant brings a rare combination of experience, from designing laser communications at NASA and time at MIT to running a family contracting business. That unique journey led him to uncover one of the biggest bottlenecks in climate action: how complicated and inefficient it is to electrify your home. With Zero Homes, he's building a radically simpler path forward. Their platform turns your smartphone into a home energy planning tool, delivering permit-ready heat pump and electrification designs, no site visit required. In this episode, we unpack the pain points of the traditional retrofit process, the hard-earned lessons from his time on job sites, power of good software to drive decarbonization, and what it takes to build a mission-driven company in one of climate tech's toughest verticals. And with that, Grant, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And of course, we'll start at the beginning. So your career, as I mentioned, spans MIT, NASA, satellite systems, but took a personal detour through your family's contracting business. How did that chapter shape the path you're on currently?
Well, I mean, certainly a lot of learnings, Yeah. I think in a lot of ways kind of got thrown into that business or threw myself into that business. Growing up, I tangentially was involved weekends after school, et cetera, from, pretty young age through high school and the like, but certainly hadn't run a business before and certainly hadn't been doing that day to day. So going from being in a lab to being day to day, doing ops in people's homes and everything else is quite a change of pace. So yeah, I think, pretty quickly, very, very different lifestyle to start from where I was at. And to your point, lots of learnings along the way there. Maybe one or two things to just poke at quickly. I think, I spent I was in hundreds and hundreds of homes.
Yeah.
Meeting with homeowners, and folks are quite nice. The one reaction to that was like, great, lots of friendly people that are super nice and everything else. and I think it turned out I was pretty good at sales. I closed about 60% of the leads that I got, that's
really good.
Something I am still proud of to date. But I think in the middle of that, also realized just how painful it was to deliver the product that homeowners were looking for. Expensive, and for them, just huge time sink.
Yeah. And thinking about that, so going through those hundreds of in-home visits, what stood out to you as the most broken part of the retrofit experience for both customers and contractors?
Well, getting started is hard for a homeowner. Right. They may have a well-formed thought about the solution they're looking for, but often they don't. Right.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for help understanding what it is that they want to actually do.
Yeah.
And that information delivery is mailed to them in the form of a nice seasoned contractor.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was that person. Right. So, I was driving all over the place, sometimes 45 minutes in a single direction to get to these homes. And it's pretty difficult then to run more than a couple visits at a time in a day, maybe three. And that's pretty tough. If you're closing 60% of your leads, great. That means you can, maybe on average, you're selling 2 new projects per day. But quickly you find yourself limited in how much volume you can put through the business. The product or the purchasing experience is very painful.
Yeah. Right.
They put up with it, but they don't want a bunch of strangers in their house, of course. Right. And, to the extent that they even feel the need, the social pressure to clean up their house before this person comes over to their house.
Yeah,
right?
I'm sure.
And it's like self-imposed, but lots of folks do that. All just to say that what folks are looking for is educating themselves on what to do. They may not know what to do to solve their problem. That they could have a well-formed thought, but often that's not the case. So they're really having multiple contractors come over so that they can get educated on these things. And it's just a debilitating process, hour to 2 hours probably dedicated per appointment. Have 3 of those at 6 hours. Plus you got to find all those folks online and find some folks you trust. So add a couple more hours for that. All of a sudden, it could be a simple project and you're already 8 hours in before you can really make a decision on what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see that kind of those pain points, and we'll dig more into this as we go. The thing too, just thinking about your transition from aerospace to home systems and kind of your path, what stood out to you, or what did you see maybe that others might overlook when talking about residential decarbonization? How did that, I guess, help your perspective, and what did you see different that others might overlook not having that?
Well, I think there's such a macro problem here, and it's such a large problem. I mean, you think about what it takes to go do 4 or 5 of these projects, meaning a heat pump, water heater, to get all the gas out of a house, maybe some insulation, whatnot in one home. It's not an insignificant project. I mean, we're talking about probably a couple hundred hours of total effort by the contractors and homeowners, et cetera. We have 60 million homes in America that need that couple hundred hours done to them. Right? And so you sort of look at that and you go, oh, wow. I at one point did kind of this top-down analysis of how much time it would take us to actually get all this work done and tried to map that to the workforce. And I just looked at that and said, well, the math isn't mathing here.
Right.
Like the numbers don't add up. And I think the issue there was to say, okay, well, if we even wanted to go decarbonize all these homes, what needed to be true? And I think that quickly led me to go, well, we need to build some technology because we need to scale some of this stuff up, and we really need to reduce some of the critical like human pinch points we have in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about too, just like your education, what you went through up until that point, a lot of times it exposes you to different things. You see different problems. You see different ways of solving problems. And it helps you think differently, probably. Like, do you feel that benefit in your day-to-day and just thinking about where you started to where you are now and maybe your ability to help solve some of those problems?
I mean, I don't think I've met another person that was in the field running a general contracting business for a few years and also building, space systems. And so I do, maybe I have an N of one perspective, unclear. There could be some other folks, but I think that does give you like a really practical perspective on, what it takes to deliver these projects. I have seen a number of folks come out of Facebook and Google and whatnot, start companies in this space. And it takes them a long time to come up to speed on what, contractors have to deal with, but they've never sat in those shoes and the emotional challenges that also come with, managing a staff that also has to be in the field and managing, a very small balance sheet and sometimes upside down cash flows and all of these things. And I think I'm very grateful look, those were hard experiences. Let's be clear about that. But I'm very grateful for that perspective now in being able to have empathy for the contractors that we work with. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're just trying to make their lives a lot easier and do our best to do that. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I was operating one of these businesses and, it's certainly not easy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so after stepping into the world of home contracting, like we mentioned, it didn't take long for the inefficiencies of the system to reveal themselves. And what began as a hands-on problem solving quickly evolved into deeper critique of how home upgrades actually happen and why so often they don't happen. And you've talked about that, how the traditional contractor sales process demands a huge amount of time and energy, as you mentioned there, for both contractors and homeowners, yet often deliver little in return. Anything else in terms of just what made you realize just how broken that system is and that there had to be a better way forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think realizing and living the day-to-day product delivery experience for homeowners, very clear to me that was quite broken, especially from their perspective, right? But also like looking at our P&L to just go, oh my gosh, we're spending 25% of revenue on ads and sales and a truck and insurance and gas in that truck and all of the different things in that. And said, well, if you want to actually improve this business, there aren't a lot of levers. You can get a little bit better at marketing. You could maybe get a little bit better at sales, but that's really not going to give you a step function change in your acquisition costs and be able to maybe reduce those costs for homeowners or dramatically reduce the time, or just be more profitable, which, every small contractor would love. There's typically low margin businesses.
Yeah.
And I said, you just need to have something that's radically different, change the entire approach in order to really clean up the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And, I think in a lot of ways, like the in-home visit is really secretly keeping the entire industry's feet stuck in concrete in a lot of ways. And if we can eliminate that as a step in the process, then there's actually a wonderful number of opportunities there to improve the experience for every stakeholder in this ecosystem. It took me a long time to figure out both, how to get that done and
Right.
and what that might look like, and to see if people were willing to, play ball in a
Yeah.
totally different workflow. But anyways, I think that the culmination of a number of perspectives there that, I think led me to the opportunity.
Yeah. And things you've already touched on. So from that homeowner's perspective, it is expensive, time consuming, awkward, yet it really has gone unchanged for so long in terms of that experience and how we do that. And so I guess, why has it gone unchanged for so long? Is it just that people are resistant to change, like, or what do you think it is?
I think it's really a technology gap in a lot of ways. If you look at the ecosystem or the folks trying to innovate in this ecosystem, you have the marketplaces, the folks like Angie's List, or in the energy space, maybe Energy Sage or Electrum, some of these marketplaces. What you can do on a web form or web experience is not much more than one step into the customer journey. You can do some education, and then you can do contractor matching, but you can't get them a quote. You might be able to get them an estimate that's, medium to low fidelity, but that's as far as you can get.
Yeah.
And a homeowner has a pretty high bar. They want a price, they want a scope of work, they want a contractor they trust, and they probably need some kind of financing, right? You need to be able to deliver all of those things. And so, the technology we've had hasn't been able to deliver that without having to go to the house, right? And so
Yeah.
one section is marketplaces, another section is sales enablement, and there's some folks that are building online estimate tools so folks can get a ballpark price without having to pick up a phone. I think that's engaging and great, and it's a little bit, an incremental step forward. And then there's also folks that are building better sales tools for when folks are in the house, right?
Yeah.
I think all of those things ultimately are just a little bit around the fringe. And yes, they're improvements, and those are also like maybe interesting businesses to build, but ultimately are not really going to take a leap forward in the productivity and cost reduction that we really need, I think, to solve the problem. And so maybe that's a long-winded answer to say, if you want to get this done, you have to be able to deliver a guaranteed quote to somebody without going to the house. It's a pretty high bar
Yeah.
in terms of the information quality you need in the house. And the technology just really didn't exist until maybe 5 or so years ago.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
and it's a pretty cool opportunity then to say, well, shoot, we can do this differently than has ever been possible. And if that's the case, then what can you actually create? And there's some pretty cool, opportunities out there leveraging some of the hardware that folks have in their pockets these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things you mentioned a couple minutes ago is just a significant portion of project costs often go towards sales and customer acquisition. I guess, firstly, why is it so expensive to match homeowners with the right solutions? And what's been missing and how the industry approaches that problem?
Yeah, well, Google's done a pretty good job of sucking up as many dollars as they can. So,
Yeah.
the channel cost is quite high, right? And what I mean by that is, as a contractor, if you want to put ads up on Google to getting a booked appointment, and it's not just Google, of course, there's lots of channels to market through. Contractors spend somewhere between 7 to 15% of revenue on
Yeah.
just lead generation, right? And so, yes, some folks are a little bit better than others at it, but ultimately, they're roughly in that cost. That's why, in a lot of ways, contractors are so focused on referrals, because that can be 1-2% of revenue, right? So it's like a pretty transformational difference. But it's difficult to build your business strictly on referrals. The second piece then is you need a human to deliver all that education, right? And the
Yeah.
truth is, like, we're expensive. We just
You're right.
are. A good salesperson's making mid 100,000, maybe over $200,000 a year in HVAC, could be more than $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
Some of these guys, and so what that means is every visit they need to, every day if you're making 200 grand a year, they need to make $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, that just is what it is. And so that quickly adds up. Sales, can be, again, probably 8 to 12% of revenue as well. And you add that up and you're somewhere between 15 and 25% quite quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. Was there a moment, so you're going through this and you're seeing these, kind of issues and like kind of thinking like, man, this just seems kind of broken, inefficient, expensive. Like, why are we doing it this way? A lot of people get there and then they just kind of accept it. Like, it's just how it is. It's operational headache. Was there a moment where you were like, no, okay, I actually have to do something about this and find a better way and implement that kind of software solution? Like, what was that journey like?
Well, that's true. I mean, I had a pretty viscerally painful experience, running this business, and we'll do a little detour to tell some of the extracurriculars around it. But I think there was kind of two separate moments, and they were 5 years apart, actually. Really, that was the pain point. And then my eyes opened and said, "Oh wow, I think I know how to solve that problem." But at the time, again, the technology didn't exist, so there wasn't a solution. I also, wasn't mature enough in my career to even build that solution at that point. So, but all to say, I think one of the most painful parts of running that business, I was driving down, so I was in Southern California, driving all around Orange County and LA, driving down the 5 freeway, tons of traffic, trying to get to an appointment, phone's ringing, trying to be productive while you're in the car and traffic and everything else. And just going like, oh my God, how are we possibly going to drive enough revenue this month when I'm stuck in traffic and I can't even get to appointments to, sell these projects? I had that experience over and over again, but I think there's a couple of particular points that one just really I come back to often, and that there isn't really a way to do it more efficiently, and a lot of folks just feel stuck. I mean, I've talked to a lot of contractors that, I mean, to be honest, they're just suffering in silence.
Exactly.
They don't know a better way to do it.
Right.
Hell, there really isn't a better way to do it in a lot of ways, so I don't blame them. But they're all looking for it. They wish it was easier. No one's coming to save them in a lot of ways, right? Like there isn't someone that's gonna make it a lot easier for them. So anyways, I felt that like in a pretty visceral way. The mountain of pressure to make your sales month and everything else weighs on top of you. So there are a lot of those, I think, moments of just super high pressure and just feeling stuck. And so some viscerally painful moments. 5 years later, fast forward, I guess, I was in the midst of building these small satellites, and just, maybe for reference, these small satellites are called CubeSats. I mean, they're about the size of a Kleenex box. Maybe a Kleenex box and a half. They're very small, and they have a little 2-inch camera aperture on them. We were doing some Earth imaging with them as well. A buddy of mine was working on that. We're on the whiteboard. He's talking about how he's pulling features and measuring clouds and stuff. I was like, man, well, what sensors are we using here? Because I was more on the electronic side, not on the optic side. Yeah. And we got to talking about that. I went home and looked at a number of the different cell phone cameras that were out there, and I went, well, dang, these are basically the same thing. If we're able to do what we were just talking about in the lab on a smartphone, could I convince a homeowner to actually just send me some of these photos and we can run it through the same software that we're using here? And could I get a good enough idea of what the scope of work was to be able to price something? I said, well, maybe I should just try that,
Yeah.
And so I did. Funnily enough, I mailed some folks some smartphones. I needed the highest end ones at that point. They weren't even very common. So I kind of was forced to do that. And 12 months later, I had sold a couple $100,000 worth of projects to homeowners, mail them this little kit with a phone and a little infrared sensor and a flashlight and all these things. I mean, it was so gimmicky. But people actually loved it. They didn't realize they were getting a little kit and everything else. And anyways, sold those projects. I delivered them with, some local contractors, and they were just happy to get the work and kind of proved out our model there. So it was pretty cool to just sort of do that on the side of being in the lab. And the day after we, delivered our satellite, I said, hey, I'm going to go do this for real now.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love those stories so much and kind of how it all came together. And obviously, it clearly sparked something that you've turned into just a viable growing business. And so I want to talk about that in terms of just turning that insight into a whole new model with Zero Homes. And firstly, just walk us through how Zero Homes actually works, especially for those that aren't familiar. Yep. And then from virtual audit to installation, what makes the experience just fundamentally different?
Yeah, well, I think we sort of flip it on its head a little bit. Instead of folks having to find contractors and host a bunch of folks in their house, they can download the app, get started immediately. We ask them to do, 15 to 30 minutes of work, depending on how large their house is, just to send us all that information, which we process, and then folks jump on a 30-minute call, just like we're sitting now.
Yeah.
And then we have an internal dashboard. We're collaboratively designing these solutions, and so if you need to do heat pump layout and size those systems, we're doing that in real time together. And so it's a very engaging process, as opposed to getting a PDF that says heat pump, maybe a couple specs on it, and $20,000 on there. Like, people are real time designing their systems, and they're picking which brands they want, and all the different performance factors. And we could talk through all of that in quite a deep conversation. People get to learn a lot through that, and they can ask all the what if questions they have in real time. And so it's a very collaborative, educational, engaging process that is, in my opinion, just dramatically different than hosting someone in your house who's gonna go poke in every nook and cranny of your house and come back and go, hey, I think this is your solution. Kind of like, well, is it? I don't know. There's not a lot of confidence building happening there.
Yeah.
And look, and some, I don't want to be too hard on contractors. Some are much better than others at that. Some of them sit down, have a long conversation about kind of the different options and things. But all to say that there's a sort of a new educational, engaging process being provided to folks that is super low touch and very low cost, right?
Yeah.
And that we can help homeowners in Florida and Oregon on the same day. And we have.
Yeah.
Right. And that's incredible. Right, where we can provide a very high level of expertise to folks without having to physically be in the same building as them.
Yeah, it's so cool and such a great solution. And I think makes so much sense for our world today and just how consumers want to interact and engage and buy. And as part of that, as we've already talked about, so you've eliminated those site visits, which I'm that way. I hate people coming in my house. I don't know. I think most people are probably that way.
Sure.
So you eliminate the site visits, still deliver permit ready plans, which is amazing. You've talked about some of the technology, but what kind of other just technical operational complexity sits behind this simplicity? But what sits behind on your side?
Yeah. We built some software that does quite a bit of analysis on these homes. So maybe I'll speak to that for a minute. We build a 3D model of folks' homes, which is quite cool. We can actually show them that and walk through it and the like. And we use that as a basis to do all sorts of things. I mean, we'll measure individual rooms to see if we can fit certain appliances in there. Also, some have specific volume requirements, like a heat pump water heater as an example. We need to know how big that room is, or we need to duct it. We also need to, maybe drain some condensate from it, run electrical. And so, having a basis of where all the things are in the house is important. We also need to know what they are. And so, we're asking folks to scan barcodes and labels and take photos of their electrical systems and appliances and so on and so forth. And we layer that all into the model. And so we can have a very rich discussion about what, to actually do. There's quite a bit of analysis under the hood to both build that 3D model and then subsequently to, understand if you have enough electrical capacity at your house, or how big of a heat pump do you need, or how big of a water heater do you need? And, why is it that water heater versus this water heater?
Yeah.
There's a lot of intelligence built into that. So there's a rule system and so on and so forth. But at the core, it's a number of different types of analysis to figure out what can be done. And then the last thing is, what are the outcomes that you'll get from these projects, right? So is it energy savings or cost savings or carbon savings, depending on what you're sort of looking for? Is it comfort that you're looking for, or just assurance that this is actually going to keep your home comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And I think we can address all of those things, but individually they need a fair amount of analysis to kind of support that. And so we've built all of that in-house to support those conversations.
Yeah, I love it. And you mentioned heat pumps, obviously a central part to Zero's offering, but they're still difficult to sell and implement well. What's driving that friction, and how are you solving it?
We try to do our best to set contractors up for success, right? I think one of the biggest challenges in this space is that heat pumps are not the same as furnaces. And maybe that's like, well, duh, but a practical consideration here is they're just completely different machines, and they're much more complex to design. Just one bit on that is furnaces are very powerful. They're creating heat with a very dense fuel, right? Yeah. And so they can produce a lot of heat really quickly. 60, 80, 100,000 BTU furnaces, are very common, and they cost, somewhere between $8,000 to $10,000. To get the equivalent amount of heat output in a heat pump, that's probably going to cost you $50,000, or $25,000 in equipment. So, sizing the system is actually like the most important part. Turns out it's actually really hard to do. And because furnaces are so powerful, you don't really need to design them to near any level of fidelity like you do a heat pump. And so, and part of the reason for that is, a 60 to 80 to 100,000 BTU furnace cost difference for the box itself is $500. And so it doesn't really matter. Contractors can go, hey, like, are you comfortable in your house? Great. I'll just throw an 80,000 BTU in. You already have one of those. Like, you should be fine. That conversation can't be had in heat pumps. And so it's really important to design them correctly. There's a couple different methodologies in how to do that. Some folks use utility bills. You can do that if you have natural gas or like pretty consistent bills being delivered to your house, though there's some danger in that. You might need multiple years of bills, and you need to correct for weather, and if you went on vacation for 2 months, and there's all sorts of challenges. But then there's like a bottoms up sort of physics model based approach. And we take that approach because it works for every home. We do calibrate with energy bills as well, but all just to say that we want a solution that works for everyone. And so that is painstaking to collect all the information for and deliver that through a simple process for homeowners. And maybe here's the punchline, is just that here's what that leads you to, is saying with a lot of confidence, hey, Mrs. Jones, you need a 2.5-ton heat pump for your house, and let's talk about how we got there. And that builds so much confidence in these folks, because they're going to get quotes for 2.5-ton systems, a 4-ton system, and a 5-ton system. And they're like, I just want my house warm. I have no idea what to do, but this is such a high dollar, high consequence decision. Maybe I should just use the bigger one, because then for sure we'll be warm, right? There's such a danger in that, because that's actually not necessarily true. It's a hard problem, and we've wanted to build a system that would build a lot of confidence for homeowners while also trying to get them into a system that's going to be affordable.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so spot on. I think just in kind of the way, a consumer would go through that process and their thought process and all that sort of stuff. I'm sitting there smiling because I'm like, I relate to all these sentiments. So yeah, it's so good. Another piece I wanted to touch on. So you briefly hit on earlier, just it's critical to move beyond sort of rough quotes and give homeowners a scoped price project up front. Why is that the case? And talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think, again, the challenge is education, right? I mean, if you just sort of look at the macro problem, again, if we're going to spend $1,500 a house to just deliver education to every home, I mean, that's a bananas number to think about, over 60 million homes. I mean, it's like, wow, we need the educational process to cost a couple of dollars total, You can't do that in the physical world. You just can't. You have to transform this into a digital, domain in order to deliver those sorts of results from a cost perspective. And so that is like really the critical point here, is we have to just totally transform the problem to be able to solve it in a way that is going to deliver, the results that we need. And, and homeowners want that, at the end of the day, they don't want to get put through the ringer just trying to come up to speed on these projects.
Absolutely. And the other side of that, because we talked about the homeowner a little bit, what role do your contractor partners play, and how does your platform shift the economics in their favor as well?
Yeah, so great question. Again, having a ton of empathy for these guys. What we're trying to do is pretty simple. Let's remove the cost centers from their business and get them in the field driving revenue as often as possible. So contractors can think about us as their external sales team. We are not bringing leads to them. We're bringing totally scoped sold jobs. We're meeting with the homeowner. We're scoping that entire solution out. We're selling it to them. We turn around, hand them plan sets, photos, all the things they need to get comfortable with what is the work that's going to be done. We then purchase the equipment, so they don't need the admin and overhead or balance sheet or credit, to be able to purchase this stuff. We deliver it to their warehouse, and then we schedule for install. And so what really ends up happening is we're paying them for the time and labor that they're spending on those jobs, and we try to deliver that at really good margins. So they're, roughly 50% gross margin on their time, which is pretty in line with, what they typically charge. And we keep their schedules full. So the kind of benefit for working with us and what we're trying to provide to them is keeping their utilization as high as possible, giving them good margin work, and those dollars are going straight to their bottom line. And so that makes their year end certainly a lot better and keeps them busy when they're not in shoulder seasons and whatnot. We can add, good margin work to their schedules. So they're staying busy.
Yeah, which I know you've created tremendous value like for the contractor and having them in mind, but I know beneath the product is a philosophy that's starting with the homeowner, kind of thinking about them and the way they're going through it. And then I'd say the rest of the industry probably builds around utilities and contractors, but Zero seems to really put the customer experience at the center, which I find great and refreshing. And again, most retrofit tech is built around contractor utility workflows, as I said, but why did you choose to center around the homeowner instead? As sort of like an initial focus.
Well, they have the most pain. Well, they have the most pain, the most to lose, and the most to gain. I mean, maybe it's just as simple as that. But, people today are going through purchasing experiences that are completely digital. You can go on Amazon and buy almost anything you want in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yep.
You can't do that for anything in your home other than solar today. And I think people are expecting a higher quality experience and a lower touch experience. And ultimately, we wanted to deliver a world-class experience for homeowners. We're talking about pointed upgrades in homes, but often hear from folks, especially some of my friends who are newer homeowners, gosh, homeownership is hard.
Yeah.
They're like, wait a minute, I didn't know I needed a Rolodex of 20 different vendors to manage this house.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, sure. I thought this was an investment, passive income. It's like, okay, let's have a real conversation about how it's anything but that, right? And I think in a lot of ways, we're just trying to make that a lot easier. And then maybe from a practical business sense, they hold the wallet, right? I mean, they're the ones spending the dollars. And so we wanted to build a world-class experience for the folks that are spending money on their homes. And we can deliver, I think, more value to them and the entire ecosystem if we're helping them through this process. In a lot of ways, we're just building the infrastructure that kind of raises all boats and make it easier for the homeowner. That also makes it easier for the contractors in the field, makes it easier for the distributors and the like. And so in a lot of ways, we're just trying to make it easier for everybody.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what have you learned about the design threshold required to win a homeowner's trust, especially when you're asking them to commit virtually? I think more and more people are comfortable with that kind of model, but it is new. Some are a little hesitant as well, too. So what does that look like when you're looking at the design and just winning their trust?
Yeah, I think when I first got going in building this stuff, I thought, we'd be able to completely automate this stuff. And I do think that there probably are some folks that are willing to go through a totally self-service configuration system to purchase these products. I do think that's real, but I do think it's a smaller part of the market than I originally thought. And a lot of folks want to ask a long tail of what if questions. Well, what if I put my indoor unit here or there? Like, how's that going to impact the comfort in this room or that room, or cost? Or there's a lot of dimensions that people are trying to solve for. And we have yet to figure out how to do that without having a human in the loop. Will we try to do that or lower the burden? Absolutely. But I do think that you need someone to build some confidence and talk through the long tail of questions that homeowners have, because this is a big purchase, and it's custom. Right? It's not, hey, I'm going to go to a car lot. There's 100 cars here. I'm just going to pick one and drive away. It's, hey, I need to design something that's custom to my home. And so we've had to build a system that can handle bespoke design for any shape and size of home, and then be able to have a quality conversation about that, and then build confidence in the person that this is the right solution for their home as well. And so, we have some experts on the team that are really well versed in all of the building science and the products and how to design and how to install these things. And our software aids them in making that a lot easier to have that conversation. And, we'll see over time. But I just think something that I thought might have been true is that we could totally automate this for a lot of folks in the market.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm backing off on that a little bit.
Right. Find somewhere balance, yeah.
But the important thing there is, of course, eventually we'll want to provide these tools to contractors as well, help them, improve the unit economics of their businesses. In a lot of ways, these folks feel like that's how they're delivering value, is having this conversation with folks. And I don't think we're trying to take that away from anyone, right?
Yeah.
I think we're just trying to make that conversation a lot easier.
Without a doubt.
To be had, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of an important piece there as well. The human element of this it's real.
Absolutely. And so building a better experience is one thing, and I think you've highlighted that really well. Scaling it is another, and a whole different host of challenges that we'll get into. But let's talk about what it's been like to lead Zero through that rapid growth. We talked and you described yourself somewhat as that CEO, just in the trenches, just getting it done, making it happen. Talk to us about that. Like, what does that look like in practice during this phase of Zero's just rapid growth?
We are growing pretty rapidly. I mean, it's been It's been doubling basically quarter over quarter for several quarters now. That doesn't just mean twice the number of homeowners. It also means building better products to make things easier and adding team members quite rapidly. And all sorts of things break when you do that, right? And so, of course, we're trying to deliver the highest quality experience to every person that we touch. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of things that are being rebuilt, internal processes, the way that we work internally with folks, the product that we are building and using. And so there's just a ton of work being done to make sure we can consistently deliver the highest quality experience that we can. And another part of the complexity for us is we're doing that across geographies.
Yeah.
So, the game changes a little bit as you jump in one geography to the next. A couple things that do practically change is the weather changes, the building stock changes, the rebates and financing solutions to change. And so, that does stretch our staff a bit from the context switching as well, to be able to make sure that, we're maximizing the amount of dollars we can get folks for these projects, making sure that we're getting them through financing forms and all of those other things in a, as elegant of a way that we can. That complexity grows, right? And I think, we're still we're a small business with 19 people. It's hard to handle a lot of that complexity with such a small staff. So all to say, it's a lot of hard work going into both growing at such a voracious pace, but, making sure that we're delivering the customer experience that we want to as part of that, not, doing our very best to not compromise on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a founder in a fast-scaling, fast-growing climate tech company or any company, what's been the most difficult part of keeping momentum while also building culture and just that part of the equation as well too, which I think is so important as the company goes and as you continue to scale?
It's funny. I'm someone who can easily get caught up in the next thing to do, or when we do accomplish something, the opportunities that then opens, and just continue to focus on, sitting in the grindstone, getting more things done. I've had to learn how to also celebrate, and not say, oh, we're just going to wait until we accomplish X thing, and X thing is a year away, but actually, really enjoy the journey, because that's what you're doing, and you have to enjoy every day. Fortunately, I think as part of this growth curve we're going through, I'm having more fun building this business and getting to work with all these people than I ever have. And so it's also like just a true joy to go to work and go, wow, the team is just crushing it, and then get to celebrate those wins and be intentional about, going to baseball games or like doing camping trips or whatever that is. That's something that I've really had to learn and work on for myself. Otherwise, I'll just go back to work.
Right.
Literally, we'll go win a new contract and I'll go, hey, great. Okay, cool. Let me go work on the next one.
Sure.
5 minutes later.
Easy to do.
I just have to check myself a little bit there. And it's important, I think, to communicate to the team as well the wins that you're having, and also to celebrate those things and to intentionally have some fun. Let yourself even have some fun in this, and not just go, hey, like, we're after this big goal that we have. I mean, ours is very ambitious. I mean, electrifying 60 million homes is not a small goal.
Right. Yeah.
Are we going to celebrate along the way? We're just going to celebrate when we get that done. And I think the point there is you got to enjoy the journey. So it's been fun for me, I think, to sort of grow up a little bit as a leader. That's sort of one dimension of a lot of those things. But
sure,
it's been really fun to work on some of those challenges as well, not just our product or customer experience or all the other business related items.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I know you're actively raising your Series A, I believe. What's resonating with most with investors, and just overall, what's that process been like?
Raising money is funny. It's a bit of an art, of course. And I think fortunately, we have built a very unique product platform that's very first of a kind and delivers some pretty compelling metrics from a business sense, but also actually, this is the thing that I'm probably most proud of. Our NPS score is incredible. Folks love this product. It's over 80. And not very many companies can say that. And so for me, it's really, amazing to see the thing that I thought could be built really coming to life. And then in a lot of ways, kind of being able to celebrate that with investors. And they ask a bunch of questions and you see their eyes go, oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize that was also possible, and how that impacts the business and your ability to actually drive impact. And so, of course, they ask really hard questions too, and you have to defend yourself and spend some time with them and the like. But I think it's been fun actually inspiring some of those folks in terms of what's possible. This has been a very hard segment for investors, especially in the climate space. There's some folks in prop tech that maybe haven't been burned as many times on quote unquote like home improvement. But I think rightfully so, people are quite skeptical of trying to build in this space because there have been a lot of, I don't know, shots on goal, and maybe that's the wrong metaphor, but a lot of companies have tried to build businesses in this space, and not very many have succeeded. So right. It takes me a little bit of time to get people over the hump. But they do come around. Not all of them, but a lot of them do.
Yeah. And kind of with that, so you're going through fundraising, momentum is building, new partners, growing traction, national attention. Zero is beginning to just shape not just how homes are upgraded, but how people think about home energy in the first place. And I want to talk a little bit about this. So being selected for Exelon's 2C2I initiative signals real momentum. Tell us a bit more about that. And also, what does this partnership mean strategically?
We have chosen to go through and help utilities actually run these efficiency and electrification programs. Historically, utilities have focused on efficiency in terms of gas efficiency or lighting or weatherization, insulation work. Not all of those opportunities have been exhausted, but a lot of the impact is starting to wane. New technologies in terms of heat pumps for space heating and cooling and water heating are coming to market, and the products are quite high quality these days. And these utilities are turning their attention towards, hey, we actually would love homeowners to install a bunch of these new appliances. The challenge is they're like 3 to 5 times as expensive as any of the other things utilities have worked on. The barrier to entry is very high, and they're not being very successful in getting folks to adopt these things without writing massive checks, right? And so in Massachusetts, as an example, utilities are writing $10,000 checks to every homeowner to get them to put one of these systems in their house. That is completely unsustainable. Right?
Sure.
It's ridiculous how much money is being spent there. And so, the thing that we can really do with these partners is really upgrade what has traditionally been used to educate folks, that sort of humble energy audit. We are collapsing what a typical sales visit and one of these advisory calls are into a single experience. So we can talk to homeowners around all those different opportunities, whether it's weatherization or batteries or heat pumps or windows or solar, et cetera. And then we can also say to them, hey, like if you want a guaranteed price for one of these projects, we can send that to you tomorrow. And, unsurprisingly, that converts people a lot better than if you send an energy auditor out and that ends with a list of contractors for homeowners to call, right? Sure. And they got dozens of hours of work to then meet with all of these folks. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's not really a great customer experience. And there's a few other things that our utility partners are after, but really at the core of it is we're helping upskill that process, and we are helping them be more successful in installing these newer appliances that frankly they really need to get on the grid. And so as a component of that, our capabilities are, quite impressive to these folks and really helping drive impact. And so Exelon as a utility, of course, they own 6 or 7 utilities across the country, has a need to do a lot of this work. They're pouring money into this and not getting a lot of return on it. So for them to both make an investment in the business, but also to help us operationalize our technology and our model within all of their utilities is obviously a huge opportunity for us. They deliver power today at 10.7 million meters. It's like 8 or 9%, I think, of all of the meters in the country. Something just totally crazy. And today we'll be announcing a partnership with one of their portcos. So ComEd in Chicago, we have a formal operational relationship with them. And so
that's awesome.
I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting our platform, embedded in many of these other programs over the next year as well. And to have those folks internally actually really helping us do that is going to make it already has made a material difference.
Sure.
And I think will continue to make a material difference in helping us jump into those ecosystems.
That's incredible stuff.
So excited about that for sure.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I'll try to link some of that stuff in the show notes as well too. People can go check out. Thinking a little bit of the future, not too far in the future, but if you see the next 3 to 5 years, thinking about Zero in terms of reach, product evolution, market impact, where do you see it headed?
I mean, we want to be the front door for homeowners to get access to the information they need to be able to execute on these projects, right? And so we will be more and more available over time, and we really have the ambition to be nationwide. We have the ambition to not just have folks go to zerohomes.com to be able to get help there, but to actually take our technology and put it in a number of different places. So powering other people's marketplaces to get help with a broad set of products. And we'll start with heat pumps there. And then also, when we're ready, we'll also provide our technology to other contractors in the space as well and help them make it easier to educate folks and deliver these projects at lower costs as well. So, we'll be in a lot of different places over time, and give us a couple of years and hopefully we'll be, nationwide and helping thousands of folks get these projects done.
Absolutely. Final question. I'll just really open it up to anything else we missed here. So anything else you want to share about Zero, about where you're headed, about something with the industry, just anything that maybe we missed or didn't get to hit on. The floor is yours for a couple minutes. Just go for it.
I'm just really excited about the future. I know as we sit here, the current macro, is a little crazy. Water's choppy in a lot of ways. The headlines are a little hard to read. And I would just say generally there's a lot of chaos in the world. But from what I see internally and from what I see in the homeowners we're working with, things are getting better every single day. And so it's really cool to just see the velocity of the business improving and to have more and more folks coming to us excited about, how we can help. And that to me is just super inspiring. Been grinding for a long time to be at this point in business. And so to really see both my team executing like crazy and helping more and more folks is just super, super fun. So frankly, I'm quite inspired about what is all going to come in the next, 12, 24 months. But I think we're headed in a great direction, and it's going to be really cool to see what kind of impact we can really drive here.
Yeah, without a doubt. Super exciting stuff, and well said there, and a great way to just conclude this episode of Green Giants. A huge thank you to Grant for sharing his story and for the work Zero Homes is doing to make home electrification more accessible, efficient, and user-friendly. And do check out the show notes. We'll link some things there for you to go check out. If you're a homeowner ready to take the next step or just curious about where the space is headed, check out zerohomes.io. And again, we'll link that. As always, to our listeners, if you enjoyed the show, be sure to follow, rate, review, share it with a friend. It definitely helps us grow and bring more inspiring guests on like Grant. Thanks for listening. And with that, we will see you next time.
This episode of Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy, was brought to you by Lee Group Search. If you enjoyed today's discussion and are looking to recruit top talent for your company, or find your next career opportunity in the renewable energy sector, visit leegroupsearch.com. Let's continue driving the future of clean energy together. Until next time, keep pushing toward a greener future.